a New York Times exclusive article released on the White House's response to the release of the Epstein files, which, and I mean, I'll not bury the lead. I'll just say it up front. They use the fucking Situation Room. They use the Situation Room. This is like the 9/11 room. This is the we're about to go to war room. They went to the Situation Room, the room you go in like when the nukes are falling, to talk about how to respond to the Epstein file release. It's about 9/11-year-olds. Good bit. Here.
On July 17th, 2025, about a year ago, a chunk of Trump's top officials who you see listed...
Oh, yeah, and Trump wasn't even there. It was literally just like every deep state contact. The funny thing is that, like, okay, legitimately, there's so much interesting stuff you can read from who was there because there are some key figures missing. Notably, the people missing are the most loyal Trump officials. J.D. Vance is the one who next wants to be president. Susie Wiles is the person who is most capable of keeping the White House together. Like, she's competent, she's evil, whatever else. But everyone else here, for the most part, sure, Todd Blanche is Deputy Attorney General, James Lawyer, Deputy Chief of Staff, but, like, the only Trump, like, loyalty figure here is Carolyn Leavitt, and that's because she's press secretary. Isn't that interesting? Like, it's like they realized this was an actual existential threat to the Republican Party, so they kept out most of the jokers. They had to bring in Carolyn Leavitt because she's the one who would have to contact the media, but apart from that, they even kept Patel and Bondi out because they're fucking idiots. Bondi and Patel are loyalists, though? Yeah, and they're not here. They're on phone to manage what they can and can't hear. I guarantee you they had, for one, the idea of like a Situation Room meeting where the president's not there. Why is Pam Bondi there? Wasn't she fired? She wasn't fired before the Epstein files were released. This is a release on what happened then for the release of the Epstein files. Why are Hegseth and Miller not there? Because they're loyalists. Like, I think my guess is that this was organized by Susie Wiles, who was trying to bring together the least clownish people in the administration to have a serious conversation where they were like, the president is a pedophile. What do we do about it? Like, the president is a pedophile and the evidence is coming out. What do we do about it? Susie Wiles was probably the one to initiate this. J.D. Vance probably agreed because he, you know, he's like the Peter Thiel pick. He's the future, et cetera, et cetera. But they wanted to keep out people like Miller and especially people like Hegseth because they're like actual fucking clowns. You know, why get RFK Jr. in there? Why get fucking Lutnick in there?
On your screen, led by the vice president, filed into the White House Situation Room without the commander-in-chief, without President Trump. They were trying to figure out how to regain control over the growing ugly narrative that the Trump administration was, at the very least, complicit in a cover-up for the crimes of now dead pedophile Jeffrey Epstein and other predators in his orbit. 10 days earlier, the Justice Department and FBI had released their nothing to see here memo, saying that their review found no client list of the powerful men to whom Epstein had allegedly trafficked girls, underage, and women. Vice President Vance reportedly told the group, this is a huge problem. And he argued that all the Epstein files should be released. The report says, quote, Vance had also floated to colleagues an extraordinary PR gambit that the White House enlists Tucker Carlson to interview Epstein's longtime girlfriend and co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, in prison.
Insane. Insane.
It might help the president if Maxwell was willing to state that Trump had not been part of any wrongdoing with Epstein. Spoiler alert, Tucker did not get that gig. You will note, however, that the goal here, as stated, seemed to be to get Trump cleared by Maxwell, who is a criminal with questionable credibility.
This is Vance trying to tank Trump to set himself up, right? No, I think that well, maybe. It's possible that Vance wanted to sink Trump because he thought the admin was going nowhere anyway, and he wanted to distinguish himself from Trump, and that he was disingenuously proposing that Tucker Carlson interview Ghislaine Maxwell, because it was known at this point that Tucker Carlson was already, like, not on board with the Trump administration. So the most likely possibility here to me is that JD Vance was like, maybe Tucker Carlson can get Trump exonerated by Maxwell, knowing Tucker would probably prompt Ghislaine Maxwell to further incriminate Trump, which would set JD Vance up favorably in the future for the administration. A lot of like Machiavellian shit going on behind the scenes, but one thing that is for sure, without a doubt, is that everyone in the White House knows that Trump is a pedophile. And also, critically, Trump was not part of efforts to manage the fallout. Probably because they didn't trust him to not repeat everything said behind the scenes. Like, they all knew that Trump had to be kept in the dark to their responses to the situation,
say the least. The task of the interview ultimately went to then Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who Trump has now nominated to be full-time Attorney General. Cut to August 13th, 2025, the Epstein scandal still raging. A similar Situation Room meeting is convened where the
It's so cool that the Epstein situation isn't raging anymore, even though the official response from the White House at this point was, we did nothing wrong. Also, if you focus on this, you're a loser. Also, we're going to stop releasing the files, even though it's illegal and we are legally obligated to release them. We're just going to stop releasing them. There are still millions of files that remain redacted or hidden. They have not justified the redactions. It's just like, yeah, whatever. What are you going to do? Sue us?
Conversation turns to what allegations might be in those files about the president. One official reportedly raised the subject of a disturbing but unverified accusation against Trump that had come to light in case filings unsealed in 2023. And that included emails sent to a journalist by Epstein victim Sarah Ransom. And apologies in advance for some of the blunt language and visuals it will impart. We are going to edit some of it just because we don't need to go into all of it. You can read the New York Times story if you want more. Ransom claimed, quote, Ransom claimed that she knew a girl in Epstein's sex trafficking ring named Jen who said she had sex with Trump. Ransom also claimed that Jen had told her that Trump had a predilection for nipples, unquote. It goes on into more graphic and disturbing details. Again, not corroborated allegation. The New York Times...
Just keep insisting it, man. Just keep... Thank you, Tapper. Thank you, loyal servant of Israel.
Report also notes that Ransom's credibility was not uncomplicated, given that she had made another claim that she had footage of prominent men having sex with young girls in Epstein's orbit, and Ransom later retracted that claim, saying she was fearing for herself and her family if she went forward. Again, just to underline, these are all unverified allegations. Trump has not been accused of any criminal wrongdoing in any sort of court of law. He denies any wrongdoing.
Yes, I mean, he has. This is just factually incorrect. He has. I need to like repeat to everyone, this is not the United Kingdom or whatever. In America, there is legally no reason to say what he is saying here, none whatsoever. There's no reason to, just none. There's no legal, like, you are completely legal, you are legally ironclad in just saying Trump is an Epstein affiliate who raped young girls. You're completely legally ironclad in that. There is not a jury in the universe that would find that violates the absolute malice standard of slander against public officials.
But Trump officials were concerned about this allegation resurfacing if the Justice Department released all the Epstein files in its searchable library, which they only did, by the way, after being compelled by Congress. Now, here's how some of the Situation Room debate went down, according to this Times report by Haberman and Swan. Quote,
Trump has never sued anyone who called him a pedophile? Yeah, because, like, what would happen in discovery? You know? Like, well, it would just, like, the court would literally just be the accused waltzing around talking like fucking, you know, talking like a Southern lawyer, talking like, fuck, what's the chicken's name? You know what I'm talking about. Running through like the millions of pieces of evidence. Foghorn Leghorn, yeah. Well, I do declare that I was acting out of the greatest adherence to what I considered the truth. And if I may approach the jury, I'd like to explain why I called the president a pedophile. And then you just run that up. You could do it for months. Great content, really. Trump ain't suing anyone. I say, my boy... now, why were you listed by 17 different contact numbers by Epstein in his little black book?
The president said he thought the president would be okay with releasing the nipple-related documents, arguing that Trump had been accused of worse. I think we should put it out, he said. It would cause people to say we're going further than we need to. Trump White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles quickly responded that the president would not, in fact, be okay with it. It was a point no one wanted to continue debating. Now, this story summed up the White House dilemma, as the report put it, quote, piles of accusations were impossible to disprove and equally impossible to make go away. Every door they opened led to another room, and in every room were more claims for more women.
Insane.
What was so interesting was that you could really see President Trump losing control of the Epstein story paragraph by paragraph as they give this internal account of the Trump team trying to deal with it. And part of what is so fascinating about it is that, listen, we're living through a presidentially led backlash to Me Too, right? The president has appointed himself the chief opponent of this movement. But then what happened is it turned out that people really cared about the Epstein files. They were gross.
I really truly do not know how, like, we have pivoted culturally into acceptance of maximal vice. The president is in favor of everything bad. He loves everything evil and hates everything good, and he's demented. He's not even like mentally competent. I don't know culturally what it's going to look like when we pivot back into like decency as a concept. And I don't mean decency in the sense of civility. I mean like civilization cannot hold if people don't believe it's bad to be bad. The open, shameless, proud announcement that you are a bad person is not civilizationally tenable. It's not stable. So at some point, through necessity, it'll whiplash back around. I just don't know how historians are going to talk about this. They're going to think people from our generation, not like Gen Z or millennials, I mean, but like this era of American history, they're going to think of us as fucking monsters. Like, the open vice we co-sign with our votes and our behavior, or at least the Republicans, they are going to be very unkind to us.
Out by the idea of young women being manipulated by the powerful and the wealthy. And part of the lasting power of Me Too is that there's a lot of empathy, especially for very young victims. And so to see the president sort of hit by, you could almost call it a backlash to the backlash, was really interesting.
Congressman, we were talking about this in the break, and you were making the point earlier on the show. A lot of what happened with Epstein-related things before the president took office for his second term was firmly in conspiracy theory world. You know, it was about a cabal, or
not really. No, I mean Trump's association with Epstein, and also the details of Epstein's sex trafficking, and also the fact that he was in contact with a buckload of powerful people were not conspiracies. They were all openly known. Like, again, she's using conspiracy theory here in like the pejorative sense, like, oh, it was a bunch of baseless speculation. It was all public info.
Things that touched on anti-Semitism and other very...
Oh my fucking God, dude. Look, have people been anti-Semitic about Epstein? Yes. Does the existence of Epstein, a super wealthy Jewish financier with connections to Mossad, inspire anti-Semitic takes? Yeah. Does it make the anti-Semitism worse to pretend that was the reason people were going after him? Like, I don't know, man. It feels to me like it would be one thing merely to say people have been anti-Semitic about Epstein, which is objectively true, but to also say it's a conspiracy, which is a lie. Like the idea that this was all conspiratorial before the most recent file release, feels like it furthers anti-Semitism to me. It feels like a calculated move to make people anti-Semitic. You know what I mean? Like if there was like a criminal who was black and he did some really fucked up shit, and then somebody went on the media and they were like, well, the main reason people are opposed to him is because of racism. Are people being racist against like black criminals? Yeah, 100%. But if you frame it that way, it kind of seems like you're baiting the bigots into making the case that you are, you know what I mean? Yeah, Groyper printer. It's Groyper printer shit, you know? You're printing Groypers.
problematic areas. But then there was this bipartisan push to put these files out there. And what you saw was it's not just.
It wasn't bipartisan. It was like several Republicans, Thomas Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and like every Democrat who were signing on to the release. It was only after that went through that it was a bipartisan push.
Just Republican and Democratic presidents, former presidents whose names appear, not to say anybody's, not to allege any wrongdoing on anybody's part, but
Jesus Christ. Platonic exorcism. I'm not saying we're uniquely terrible as people compared to any other point in history. I'm saying that our leaders celebrate vice in a way that's almost historically unprecedented. I genuinely can't think of any other time that compares to this. Even the most monstrously evil leaders in human history have hidden behind a shield of virtue. Like, they lie, yeah. History's full of genociders and slavers and so on, but it is very, very, very difficult to find. In my opinion, I think the morals of the Trump administration are maybe closest to like the Hellenic or the pagan virtues of the pre-Christian Europe. That is to say, like, people used to think the gods were not agents of morality. They were just agents of nature that acted according to their own whims. The Vikings didn't really assign that much moral value to being altruistic. Their perspective was like, it is good to be strong because the weak die. Like, more like they didn't ask the same moral questions that we did. Their assessment of virtue was different than ours was. And it seems like that's where we're at now. We no longer, at least our leaders, don't assign moral value to being good people. They assign moral value to being strong enough to get away with what they want to do. And I really don't think there's a comparison to this. If you go back to the 1960s, if you go look at the segregationists at the time, they were cloaking their vice and virtue. They were not celebrating the vice. I guess another way of putting it is that a scandal on the scale of the Epstein files at any other point in American history would have sunk a president and their approval rating with their own party. For Trump, it brought 90% approval rating down to 85 among Republicans. I guarantee you, man. I guarantee you. You can go find the most openly racist, like slavery-loving American president. If there was anything comparable to this that came out about them, all of their slavery-loving white supporters would have been like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, they would have been like, okay, like, it's not a matter of whether they were worse people on average. It's just like the shamelessness is just unprecedented. Ah, you get me. So what changed? I think that, a lot of stuff has changed. I think that the main thing that has changed is that certainly since the Enlightenment, the promise of not just democracy, but of civilization was the promise of making things better. If you were like a peasant in ancient Egypt, you did not live day to day looking forward to the promise of your pharaoh making your life better. Like, your life was toil and that was it. You weren't really part of like a historical movement of progress. But over the past several centuries, maybe longer back, I'm speaking very generally here, I think that people believe the point of collective social engagement, politics, government, everything, even things like the Crusades, right? Like, the Crusades were promised as a way of making the world better, by and large. They weren't, right? But that was the logic. The logic, like, you take back, you're fighting for Christendom, you're fighting the Saracens, you're taking, Constantinople, even though you just fucking lost Constantinople. Like, that shit, it was imposed. The argument was that in some way your actions were trying to contribute to a positive arc in history. Obviously, that doesn't mean you were doing good things. It just means that that was an argument that was being made. And I think that uniquely, over the past couple of decades, we have lost faith in historical progress. Now, when people look to the future, they see oblivion. Everyone sees an apocalypse in the future. Even the most delusionally optimistic liberals understand that, like, immediate assessment of the future is looking grim. Not just because of some like temporal thing, not because of some like immediate concern, not like, oh, well, it's going to be a bump in the road, but we'll get over it. That's how people thought about World War II. World War II was very dangerous globally. It was, after all, a world war. So was the Cold War. But people still thought about historical progress back then, right? Like, people in the 1950s and 60s, in spite of the threat of global nuclear annihilation, did, when they were asked to think about the future, thought about them in a utopian way. In a way, I think that the death of the American World's Fair was kind of like the symbol of this change in thought. People used to think that everything, social developments, technological developments, even things that are now considered to be like unambiguously bigoted, like a belief in phrenology, scientific racism, and eugenics, they were employed rhetorically as part of the belief that things could be made better. Like, even bigots and conservatives made utopian arguments about the future. Does that make any sense? You can see this, by the way, in the writings of scientific racists. I'm not arguing that they were truthful or good or anything, but the way they framed their perspective was the idea that, like, by understanding the natural world, you get me, you know how scientific racists talked. You can imagine how they talked. Like, we can build a society that is more congruous with human nature. That was the vision they sold to you, even though it was coped to justify irrational racism. They had a vision for the future, exactly. But now I don't think we do. I think that we don't really have a vision for the future anymore. I think that on an intuitive level, people no longer look to government or technology or even things like medicine or whatever, or energy generation, you know, like solar. I don't think people look at that stuff as part of a narrative about future progress anymore. It's the Penguin video. Remember the Penguin video the Department of Homeland Security posted about how, like, Americans understand you have to commit suicide as a penguin? Go watch the Folding Ideas video. I think that really does explain it. I think that we're dealing with like a bent of conservative moral nihilism because they have no vision for the future. They talk about a white ethno-state. They talk about destroying woke. They neither want nor care about either of those things. They're just lashing out. They don't actually believe in implementing this. They have no policies they want to implement. They have no goals they want to achieve. I think that it's a purely emotional movement that has no ties to like a empirical vision of building a better future. And for that reason, you might as well just celebrate vice. Celebrating vice, something that everyone understands is destructive, is something that only makes sense if you think the destruction is inevitable anyway, that you have reached like the end of history. They're the ones who believe in the end of history, but they believe it in a different way than Fukuyama said the liberals did. The liberals thought they'd arrived at an end point. Conservatives think they've arrived at the end. Does that make sense? Have I explained this well? I think that I have. That's why I think we are in a unique era for the glorification of vice. I think they think nothing matters anymore. They accuse us of being postmodernists, but they're projecting. They are, in fact, real ones, not consistent ones, but they do not believe in empirical reality. They are essentially committing suicide as a political movement. I think we've gotten all we care about from the CNN bit, but yeah, I'll watch the Folding Ideas video. Shameless content stealing from one of my favorite YouTubers. I hope he doesn't get mad about it. If you have not watched every Folding Ideas video multiple times, then you're not on my level.
On January 23rd, 2026, the Twitter account DHSGov tweeted, "Americans have always known why." The attached video is a clip from Werner Herzog's documentary Encounters at the End of the World, a segment that features a penguin breaking from the collective.
You've already watched this video? I know. And we are watching it again because it is to my point. And that'll be part of the segment.
Walking off towards the distant mountains, to which Herzog says, "But why?" At this point, the video replaces footage of penguins with footage of Trump and his Gestapo goons in ICE brutalizing the American people. The intent here is to call to American exceptionalism, the frontier spirit. Americans have always known why, they say, because the pursuit of the majesty in the distance is supposedly quintessentially American. It casts Trump as the renegade penguin, a lone wolf hero breaking away from the herd, doing his own thing, an American thing which has presumably been lost. Trump, severing America's ties with its allies, warmongering, and his trade wars are just American individualism, baby. Don't follow that penguin herd to the ocean full of fish. It's very profound. It's a profound statement, and that's why this is a king penguin. It also attempts to paint the present as merely an uncomfortable phase that must be endured before a promised reward, the long ice sheet between now and the mountains. You don't get to see the mountains if you aren't willing to walk the distance, which is a thing Americans have always known but simply forgot before Trump came to show them the way back. The murder of...
I'm sorry, I don't have much to add to this because I consider this short video, which is a little bit less than 4 minutes long, to be a perfect video. I think it is the best and most succinct description of what is wrong with the modern conservative movement, not just in America, but globally, because this is a global phenomenon right now. I think that all other analysis pales in comparison to this. It is the most revealing video, the most revealing bit of media ever posted by the Department of Homeland Security or any conservative organization, and this analysis of it is the best analysis that there is of it, in my opinion. We know bitch play the video. I'm just saying!
Civilians, the brutalization of the populace, the state of fear, the concentration camps, the open admission to using ICE to punish Trump's political opponents to gain access to voter rolls. This terrorism is simply the cost of getting to the mountains where, implicitly, America will be great again. Layla Cunningham, a UK politician running for Mayor of London under the Reform Party, has also embraced this penguin as a symbol, posting an AI-generated image of her walking towards the mountains hand in flipper with a penguin. Right-wing politicians around the world have embraced this penguin as a symbol of their pursuit of a distant ideal. But that's not really what's happening here. The penguin isn't just like wandering off to see some sick mountains because it's never going to get there. There's no food, there's no shelter, there's no security. The penguin is going to die. Immediately before the clip in the full documentary, Herzog asks a penguin expert if penguins can go insane. So another thing that's implicit underneath this is the recognition that Trump and his cronies are on a suicide mission. They do not believe in the future, they cannot conceptualize the world surviving the present, and so theirs is an embrace of pure id, pillaging what future does exist to live out a revenge fantasy for no other reason than because they can. Their only policy is chaos and hatred, because where they're going, they don't need policies. The actual mountains, America the Great, and its promised flourishing don't matter. It can remain a hazy shape on the horizon because no one headed there will live to see it. Their only goal is to take everything else with them on the way out into the ice to die. Now, maybe that's just cope on my part. I, too, am human and need to
Not even fascism in the 30s was this nihilistic? No, it wasn't at all. Again, like, the Nazis did believe in a future. It was a monstrous one, but in this respect, the modern fascist movement has literally nothing in common with the fascism of the 1930s. Maybe like the defining characteristic of neo-fascism then is that not only can you not get done what you want to get done, but you don't even believe in getting done what you say you want to get done. Like neo-fascism is defined by a lack of belief in the future. Maybe.
Rationalize the world as it exists, grapple with the future, but it would go a long way to explaining
like old style fascism was a death cult, a suicide cult, in the sense that the logical outcome of a deliberately irrationalist society that values machismo, strength, warfare, and destruction over anything else is self-destruction. But that was a byproduct of its founding principles, a undesirable outcome that it was inevitably going to head towards anyway. Whereas now, under neo-fascism, the self-destruction, the suicide, is the goal. It is not an unintentional byproduct of a flawed and contradictory set of principles. It is the reason you are doing this.
Modern right-wing...
In this respect, modern-day neo-fascists might be the least convincible and the least socially valuable people to have ever lived. There's like, in terms of like their adherence to the social contract, they might actually be the worst in terms of like social stability in the long run. Maybe not in terms of social stability, but like politically their ideology is the least conducive to building a society ever. In my opinion, yeah.
Propaganda is so grim and nihilistic, reticent to depict any coherent ideal, even an unrealistic, unobtainable one. Herzog intended for the penguin to reflect on humanity. Encounters at the End of the World is unabashedly an anthropomorphic film about the stories that people read into nature in order to say something about ourselves, and to that end, the United States Department of Homeland Security has looked at this penguin and said, yep, that's us. We're doing this for no reason. We have no hope of success. There is no meaning to this. You don't need to ask us why, because you've always known why.
Mm-hmm. It's a perfect video. It really is. Yeah, again, not that he needs me touting his virtues, but Folding Ideas might be one of the best YouTube channels. I mean, anything here that says I haven't watched it is lying to you. I've watched every video of his. So it's a phenomenal. You get me. Anyway, yeah.